Before you settle in, and before the darkness I'm about to describe finds its way under your door, I'd ask you to do one small thing. If you appreciate these journeys into the forgotten shadows, please subscribe to this channel. It lets the algorithm know that you too are drawn to the macabre. Now, lock your doors. The year is 1827. The place is not yet a state, but a territory, Missouri. Specifically the Ozark Plateau, a vast, undulating sea of ancient mountains, far older than the Rockies, worn down by time to their very bones. These are not the soaring, majestic peaks of the West. These are the Ozarks. They are dense, secretive, and watchful. The hills are a maze of oak and hickory. The valleys are choked with sycamore and shadow, and the ground itself is treacherous, hiding a labyrinth of sinkholes and caverns that the locals claim go clear down to hell. In this wilderness, in a hollow so deep and narrow it only saw true sunlight at high noon, lived the Harrow family. They were not Ozark people, not really. The locals, what few there were in the scattered settlement of Possum Creek some 15 miles down the river, knew them only as the Harrow folk. They were the ghosts who lived up in the holler that bore their name. They kept to themselves, traded pelts for salt, and shot only twice a year, and were known for their silence. Their homestead was a fortress, built not against the native tribes, who mostly kept to the plains, but against something else. The cabin was built of thick, hand-hewn poplar logs, the gaps chinked with mud and limestone. It was nestled against a sheer bluff, giving it only one true direction of approach. The family consisted of four. Silas, the father, was a mountain of a man, bearded and grim, with eyes that never seemed to rest. His wife Martha was a pale bird-like woman who had married into the family name and lived in a state of perpetual quiet terror. Then there was grandmother Sorcia, Silas's mother, a woman so old she seemed carved from the same ancient rock as the mountains themselves. She was the one who remembered. She was the one who carried the history. And then there was Alara. Alara was 19. She was of the Ozarks, born in this very cabin, yet the blood that ran in her veins was Appalachian. She was tall and strong, unlike her mother, with hair the color of a raven's wing and eyes the color of moss. She could track a deer for 2 days, skin a buck, and handle a long rifle as well as her father. She knew the woods, she knew the herbs, and she knew the silence. But she also knew the secret. It was a feeling, more than a fact. An itch, as her father called it. A coldness that sometimes pooled in her hands and feet, a sensation like ants crawling under her skin. It was the legacy of her lineage, the Harrow blight. This morning, in the humid dawn of late October, that itch was stronger than usual. The air was heavy, smelling of damp leaves and decay. Alara was checking the rabbit snares she'd set along the ridge above the holler. She moved silently, her moccasins making no sound on the damp earth. She found a snare, not with a rabbit, but with a possum, its neck broken. As she reached down to unhook it, a wave of dizziness washed over her. The itch flared, hot and cold at once. She looked at her hand. The veins on the back of it, usually faint and blue, seemed to darken, turning a shade of bruised purple, almost black. They looked less like veins and more like tiny roots spreading under her skin. She gasped and pulled her hand back, rubbing it fiercely against her buckskin trousers. The sensation faded, the color receded. She stared at the dead possum. Around the snare, in a perfect 1-foot circle, the damp green moss had turned a sickly, brittle brown. It was dry, as if the moisture had been violently sucked from it. Alara's breath caught in her throat. She had seen her father do this, seen her grandmother do it. When they were angry or afraid or in pain, the blight would surface. It was a hunger, not of the stomach, but of the blood. A hunger for life, not to consume it, but to drain it. She grabbed the possum, reset the snare with trembling fingers, and ran. She fled down the ridge, leaping over fallen logs and dodging spiderwebs, the dark tangled woods of the Ozarks swallowing her whole. She ran from the feeling in her hands, from the discoloration in the moss, and from the history that had followed her family from the deep, dark heart of Appalachia, a history the church had tried, and failed, to burn from the world. Ilara burst into the cabin, the heavy plank door slamming shut behind her, making her mother jump and drop a wooden spoon. The cabin's single room was dim, smelling of wood smoke, curing herbs, and something else. The faint metallic tang that always hung around her grandmother. "The blight," Ilara whispered, breathing hard. She held up her hand, though the veins had already returned to normal. I think it's coming. On the ridge. The moss." Silas, who had been cleaning his rifle by the hearth, went rigid. He rose slowly, his sheer size seeming to shrink the room. His face, usually just grim, was now a mask of pure, primal fear. "Show me," he growled. Martha stifled a sob and turned her back to them, clutching a small, crude wooden cross that hung around her neck. She was from a God-fearing family in Springfield and had never, in 20 years, reconciled herself to the family she had married into. "No, Silas." The voice was dry, like rustling leaves. It came from the corner, where Grandmother Sorcia sat in her rocking chair, wrapped in a quilt despite the humidity. Her eyes, clouded with cataracts, were fixed on Ilara. "It is her time. Sit, Acheline, sit." Ilara, trembling, obeyed. She sat on the low stool by the old woman's feet. Silas remained standing, his fists balled, his knuckles white. "You are afeared," Sorcia stated. It was not a question. "It withered the ground," Ilara said, her voice small. "I felt hungry, but not for food. I felt cold." Sorcia nodded, a slow, creaking movement. That is the debt. That is the strain. You are old enough to know the full truth, not just the whispers." Sorcia had been born in 1750, not in the Ozarks, but in the deepest, most shadowed valleys of the Appalachian Mountains, in the colony of North Carolina. Her grandmother, she claimed, had been one of the first. "They call this land old," Sorcia hissed, gesturing to the window. This is nothing. This is rock and scrub. Appalachia, that is ancient. The mountains there are alive. They have teeth." She told the story, the one Ilara had only heard in fragments. The story of the first Harrow, Cillian, in the late 1600s. He and his family had come from Ireland, indentured and broken, fleeing persecution. They settled in a remote Appalachian valley, but they were not prepared. The winter was brutal, a little ice age, the preachers called it. They were starving. The local tribes, the Cherokee, avoided their valley, calling it Unilanuhi, a place of the abnormal. "The children were wasting," Sorcia whispered, her cloudy eyes looking into the past. Cillian's wife was gone. He went into the woods, into a grove of hemlocks so old they blocked the sun. He didn't pray to the Christian God. That God had abandoned him. According to the legend, Cillian Harrow found something else. A presence. Not a spirit, not a demon, but something rooted in the earth itself. A hunger that slept beneath the mountains. A pre-human, pre-memory thing. And he made a bargain. "He offered his bloodline," Sorcia said, her voice cold. "He offered us in exchange for survival. He tethered our family to that thing. And it answered. The family survived the winter. The deer, starving themselves, seemed to walk right into their snares. The blight that was killing the other settlers' crops skirted their small farm. But the price was the blight, or the Appalachian strain. It is a shadow," Sorcia explained. "A shadow of the hunger Cillian woke. It lives in our blood. It gives us strength. It keeps the sickness at bay. It makes the woods ours. But it must be fed. When we are weak, or scared, or full of rage, it surfaces. It tethers us back to the earth, and it draws. It pulls the life from the living, the plant, the insect, the animal. And if you are not careful, the man." This was why they were here. The church, not the local, circuit-riding Methodists, but a different church, an older one, based in Boston and Salem, had heard of them. They called themselves the Pious Hand of God. They recognized the strain for what it was, not witchcraft, but something other. An anti-creation. "They hunted us," Silas said, his voice rough. "They came in the night with torch and Bible. They burned our kin in Appalachia. They burned the homesteads, salted the earth, and struck our names from every record, every census, every family Bible they could find. They tried to erase us." Sorcia, then a young woman, had fled with her husband and a baby Silas. They walked west for a decade, always moving, always hiding, until they found the Ozarks, a place that felt remote enough and wild enough to hide their shadow. They believed they succeeded, Sorcia concluded, placing a brittle, cold hand on Alara's head. They think the Harrow lineage is ash, but it is not. It is here, it is in you, and it is waking. 15 miles away, the settlement of Possum Creek was little more than a muddy clearing on the banks of the White River. It held a general store, a blacksmith, and 24 cabins. It was a place of hard-bitten, suspicious folk. They were trappers, subsistence farmers, and woodsmen who distrusted strangers and relied on their own judgment. Into this settlement rode a man who was the antithesis of the frontier. He rode a fine black gelding, not a scrubby mule. He wore a heavy black wool frock coat, dark trousers, and polished boots, all of which were spotless despite the muddy track. He was clean-shaven, which alone made him an oddity. His face was pale and sharp, with eyes the color of a winter sky, cold, clear, and penetrating. He carried a leather satchel and a Bible bound in dark, unmarked leather. He dismounted in front of the general store, a rickety building run by a man named Hiram Spleen. A few trappers, including a prominent local named Jedediah Vance, stopped their whittling to watch. The stranger entered the store. The air inside was thick with the smell of tobacco, molasses, and curing hides. "A good day to you, sir," Hiram said, wiping his hands on his apron. "What can I do for you? Fixin' to head west?" "I am not," the stranger replied. His voice was educated, with a sharp New England accent that sounded alien in the Missouri hills. "My name is Reverend Theron Cole. I am searching for a lost flock." "A flock, ye say?" Hiram grunted. "Ain't much of a church round here. Got a circuit rider comes through about spring and fall. But you don't look Methodist." "I am of an older denomination," Cole said smoothly, his eyes scanning the shelves. "I am seeking a particular family. They would have passed through here, perhaps 20 years ago. A man and wife, and a small child. The name is Harrow." The name hung in the air. Jed Vance, who had been lingering by the door, spat a stream of tobacco juice onto the porch. Hiram Spleen frowned. "Harrow? I know that name. They ain't from here, but they're here. Live up in the deep woods, north of the river, in that cursed holler off the limestone bluffs. Why you looking for them? They ain't good company." "Why do you say that?" Cole asked, his gaze sharpening. Jed Vance spoke up from the doorway. He was a broad man, dressed in buckskins with a respectful but wary nature. "They're unnatural, Reverend. They keep to themselves, which is fine. But the woods round their land, it's quiet. Too quiet. Ain't no bird song. I had a hound follow a deer onto their land last winter. Found him 3 days later, stiff as a board. Not a mark on him, but he was brittle, like he'd been dried from the inside out." A thin, almost imperceptible smile touched Reverend Cole's lips. "Dried, you say? Interesting. They're a blight, that's what," Hiram added. "Had a cow wander up there 2 years back. Found her the same. Withered. And the family themselves?" Cole pressed. "Only see the man, Silas, and sometimes the girl, Alara," Jed said. "They come for supplies. They trade prime pelts, I'll give 'em that. But they got dead eyes. The old woman, his ma. Ain't seen her in a decade. Most reckon she's long dead. They're just wrong." Reverend Cole placed a few coins on the counter. "I will need supplies. Salt, flour, lamp oil, and a map of this territory, if you have one." "Ain't no maps of these hills, mister," Hiram scoffed. "Only what's in a man's head." "Then," Cole said, turning to Jedediah Vance, "perhaps I could hire you as a guide. I wish to bring God's word to this lost family." Jed shifted, uneasy. "I don't go up to Harrow Holler. Ain't right. And they don't take to visitors. They'll shoot on sight, I reckon." "I am not concerned with temporal threats," Cole said, his voice dropping. He opened his dark Bible. Tucked inside was not a crucifix, but a small, sharp, silver inlaid stake. "I am concerned with the eternal. This family carries an Appalachian stain, a sickness of the soul that my order was charged with cleansing generations ago. We believed the work was finished. We were wrong." He looked at Jed, his blue eyes burning with a cold, righteous fire. The pious hand has a long memory, and it has finally found the last root of the Harrow tree. The narrator's voice returns, low and conspiratorial. If you're still with me, huddled in the safety of your home, I ask for that small favor again. Please take a moment to subscribe. It is the light we use to find each other in the dark. Now let us return to the shadows of 1827. Jedediah Vance was a man of the mountains. He understood the rules of the wild. He respected the power of the panther, the venom of the copperhead, and the fury of a sudden storm. He also respected the Harrow's desire for isolation. But this Reverend Cole, he brought a different kind of fear, a fear of the unnatural, of the unholy. The talk of a stain and a cleansing resonated with the deep-seated superstitions that governed life in the Ozarks. "I won't lead you to their cabin, Reverend," Jed said firmly, standing on the store's porch. "That's their land, and this ain't a matter for me." "Your caution is admirable, Mr. Vance," Cole replied, unmoved. "But it is misplaced. You spoke of your dog, of the withered cow. You see the symptom, but you do not recognize the plague. This is not a simple wrongness. It is an ancient corruption, a bargain struck with the adversary in the shadows of Appalachia. It drains the life from God's creation to sustain its own unnatural existence." Cole's words were hypnotic. He wasn't a shouting fire and brimstone preacher. He was a surgeon diagnosing a disease. "I will go alone," Cole announced. "But tell me, how do I find the holler?" Hiram Spleen, sensing a customer, whether for supplies or salvation, pointed a flour-dusted finger. "Follow the White River north till you reach the tall limestone bluffs. There's a creek, barely a trickle, that feeds in. They call it Ash Creek. Follow it west, deep into the hills. You'll find their holler. But don't say I didn't warn you. They're quick with the rifle." "The righteous need no armor but their faith," Cole said. He bought his supplies and within the hour was riding north, a solitary black figure against the vast green and gold canopy of the Ozark autumn. Back at the Harrow homestead, the tension was a physical thing. Ilara's encounter on the ridge had shattered the fragile peace. Silas spent the day pacing the perimeter of their land, his rifle in hand, his eyes scanning the woods. Martha wept quietly as she cooked. Ilara sat with Sorsha, who was attempting to teach her the control, a discipline of the mind that the Harrows had developed to manage the blight. "It is a part of you, girl," the old woman rasped, her hands gripping the arms of her chair. "You cannot fight it. That is what your father does. He fights, and so it tears at him, makes him brittle. You must not fight it. You must guide it." "Guide it where?" Ilara asked, her own hands clenched. The itch was constant now, a low thrum beneath her skin. "Into the earth," Sorsha whispered. "When Cillian made the pact, he tethered us to the deep places. When the hunger comes, you do not let it take from the living. You do not pull from the rabbit or the deer. You place your hand upon the rock, upon the unliving stone, and you push the hunger down. Give it back to the earth. It is a debt, see? We are only borrowing." She made Ilara practice. Ilara placed her hand on the cold stone of the hearth. She closed her eyes, trying to find the cold, coiling thing inside her. She focused, trying to push the energy, but it wanted to pull. She felt the small spider in the corner of the hearthstone freeze. "No," Sorsha slapped her hand away. "You are lazy. You take what is easy. The life of a spider is easier to drain than the patience of a stone. You must be stronger than the blight. You are its master, not its vessel. Try again." Ilara tried for hours, sweating, trembling, until she finally felt a different sensation. A deep cold emptiness from the stone beneath the cabin, a giving rather than a taking. When she pulled her hand away, she was exhausted, but the itch had subsided. The spider in the corner moved again. "Good," Sorsha breathed, sinking back. "You learn, you must, for they will come. They always come." "Who?" Ilara asked. "The cleansers, the pious hand. They who smell our shadow on the wind. They thought they burned us out of Appalachia, but a root survived. And now, I fear they have smelled us blooming in the west." At that exact moment, miles away, Reverend Theron Cole reined in his horse. He had found Ash Creek. He dismounted, and as he did, he noticed something. On the damp ground, half hidden by a fern, was a small, crudely made snare. It was empty, but in a perfect circle around it, the moss was withered, brown, and brittle. Cole knelt. He touched the blighted moss. It crumbled to dust. He looked up the creek, toward the dark, narrow valley from which it flowed. "I am close," he whispered to the woods. He pulled his dark Bible from his satchel. "The Lord has delivered the unholy unto me." The last of the Appalachian stain. The sun began to dip, painting the western sky in hues of blood orange and violet. But no light penetrated the Harrow holler. The canopy was too thick. A deep, oppressive twilight settled over the homestead. Silas returned from his patrol, his face dark. "Something's out there," he muttered, barring the heavy door. Not a man. Something watching. "A critter?" Martha asked, her voice trembling. "Aye, a big one. Smelled it on the ridge. A panther." A mountain lion, or panther, as the locals called them, was a serious threat. But for the Harrows, it was something more. The blight, the strain, had an unfortunate side effect. It attracted predators, not in a natural way. They seemed to be drawn to the smell of the blight, like sharks to blood, yet were also repulsed by it. It drove them mad. As night fell, the sounds began. A low, guttural cough from the woods, the scrape of claws on the bluff above the cabin. Ilara sat by the hearth, trying to practice Sorcha's control, but the mounting fear made the itch unbearable. Silas stood by the cabin's single window, his rifle loaded, peering into the gloom. Martha prayed over her wooden cross. Then a heavy thud shook the entire cabin as something massive threw itself against the door. The thick wood groaned, but held. "It's on the porch," Silas whispered. Another crash, this one from the roof. Claws scraped on the wooden shingles. The panther was testing the structure, driven by an unnatural, blight-fueled frenzy. "It's trying to get in the chimney," Martha screamed, pointing up. A small shower of soot fell into the hearth. "Silas," Sorcha commanded. "The blight, use it, drive it away." "No," Silas snarled. "That's what it wants. It's what he wants." "Who?" Ilara asked. The man in black. "I smelled him too on the wind, down by the creek. He's not normal. He smells like iron and cold ash. He's one of them. He's a hunter." The panther on the roof roared, a terrifying, resonating sound that vibrated in their chests. It was scratching at the chimney cap. "He's watching," Silas panted, his eyes wide with paranoia and the pressure of the suppressed blight. "He sent the beast. He's waiting for me to show myself." "Silas, you fool," Sorcha shrieked. "He doesn't need you to show him. He's here. He followed the scent of our damnation. The panther will tear the roof open. Use the blight, or we all die in this box." The panther crashed against the door again, splintering the frame. "I can't," Silas gasped. The fight was going out of him. The itch was overwhelming him. His veins were turning black, visible even in the dim light. "It's too strong. Ilara, your mother. Get to the root cellar." "No." Ilara stood up. The fear, the adrenaline, her father's terror, it all coalesced. The blight didn't just itch, it burned. She felt the cold hunger rise from her stomach into her throat. "Ilara, no!" Martha cried. But Ilara was already moving. She unbarred the door. "Get back!" Silas yelled, lunging for her. She threw the door open. The panther was there, crouched on the porch, a gaunt, massive female, its eyes glowing yellow-green, its muzzle wrinkled in a snarl. It sprang at her. Time seemed to slow down. Ilara didn't raise her hands to defend herself. She didn't scream. She simply opened the valve. She didn't try to control the blight. She didn't try to push it into the stone. She let the hunger, the cold, ancient shadow from Appalachia pour out of her. It happened in an instant. There was no sound, no flash of light, only a sudden, profound absence. The panther, in mid-leap, stopped. Its snarl froze on its face. The life just left. It didn't yelp. It didn't bleed. It just crashed onto the porch, a heavy, inert weight. It was dead. Utterly. But it wasn't just the panther. Alara looked at her feet. The wooden porch beneath her was gray and desiccated. The wild ferns growing beside the steps had turned to black powder. A young sapling 10 feet away shriveled, its leaves crumbling to dust. The air grew intensely cold, and the buzzing of the crickets stopped. A circle of absolute death, 20 feet wide, radiated from where Alara stood. She looked at her hands. They were skeletal, the skin pale and tight, the veins standing out like black ropes. "Oh God," Martha whimpered from the doorway. Silas stared, horrified. "What did you do?" Alara looked at the dead panther, then at her father. The hunger was still there, unabated. "It wasn't enough," she whispered, her voice sounding distant. From the woods just beyond the edge of the clearing, a single set of hands began to clap. A slow, measured, mocking applause. Reverend Theron Cole stepped out of the shadows. He was not smiling. His face was one of grim satisfaction, like a scientist who has just proven a terrible hypothesis. "Magnificent," Cole said, his voice cutting through the dead silent air. "I have read the accounts from Appalachia, but to see it, the full flowering of the Harrow blight. You did not just kill it, you unmade it. You are, all of you, an abomination in the sight of the Lord." Silas reacted instantly. He raised his rifle and fired. The explosion was deafening in the small holler. The rifle ball, aimed square at Cole's chest, struck the Reverend and stopped. It didn't ricochet. It didn't penetrate. It simply hit the black wool of his coat and dropped to the ground, flattened. Cole didn't even flinch. He simply brushed his chest where the bullet had hit. "Lead is a temporal concern, Mr. Harrow. My armor is faith. Your earthly weapons are useless against a true servant of the pious hand." Silas, his face a mask of disbelief and rage, began to frantically reload. "Stop, Pa!" Alara cried. She could feel the power receding, the sickness and exhaustion taking its place. The blight had taken its toll on her too. Her legs felt weak. "The girl is wise," Cole said, taking a step forward into the edge of the clearing. He held his dark Bible aloft. "I have come not to destroy you, but to save your souls, though your flesh must be purified. You're one of them," Sorcia rasped, appearing in the doorway, supported by Martha. "A cleanser. I thought we left your kind in the mountains." "The hand does not forget," Cole said, his eyes finding the old woman. "Sorcia Harrow, born 1750, fled the Carolina colony in 1774, evading the righteous fire that consumed your kin. You carried the seed of the blight west, a grave sin. You allowed it to root in new soil." "You speak of my family," Silas roared, leveling the reloaded rifle. "I speak of your curse," Cole countered, his voice rising in righteous zeal for the first time. "I hold here the Liber Cineris, the Book of Ash. It contains the testimony of those who witnessed your ancestor Cillian make his pact in the dark wood. It lists every soul your lineage has withered. It details the pact he made with the hunger of the earth, the fames terrae." He was now 10 yards from the porch, standing just outside the circle of decay Alara had created. "Your ancestor," Cole continued, his voice resin running, "in his weakness, tethered his bloodline to a power that is not of God, nor of the devil, but of the empty void that existed before God. You are not possessed. You are displaced. Your very souls are hollow, and you fill them by draining his creation." "Lies," Martha screamed, clutching her cross. "We are God-fearing people." "Are you?" Cole sneered. "Your cross is wood, madam. It is life. Let your daughter touch it. See what hollow truth remains." Martha recoiled, looking at Alara's pale, dark-veined hands in terror. "You see?" Cole said softly. "The stain runs deep, but there is a path to salvation. Renounce the pact. Surrender to the hand. We will perform the rite of severance. It will be painful, and your temporal lives will be forfeit. But your souls may yet be cleansed from the Appalachian strain and allowed to enter his kingdom." "You mean you'll burn us?" Silas growled. "Fire is the great purifier," Cole said simply. "It is how we erased your line before. It is how we shall finish the work now." Silas lifted the rifle again. "Alara, run. Get your grandmother. Run for the caves." "No," Alara said. She was weak, but the defiance in her was new. The surge of power had changed her. "We don't run. Not from him." She stepped off the porch, standing over the withered corpse of the panther. She faced the Reverend. "You came here alone." "I am never alone," Cole said, but a flicker of something, annoyance. He had expected them to flee or beg. "I came to offer the terms of your purification." "And if we refuse?" Alara asked. "Then I am merely the herald." Cole raised his left hand. He wore a simple silver ring. He twisted it. From the woods, on the ridges surrounding the holler, came an answering sound, a horn, and then another. "The good people of Possum Creek are concerned," Cole said. Mr. Vance and his friends were quite moved by my sermon on the nature of plagues. They are coming to see the source of the wrongness in these hills. Torches. Dozens of them. They could see them now, high up on the ridges, beginning their descent into the Harrow Holler. A pious posse. "You cannot fight a holy crusade, girl," Cole said. "Your shadow cannot drain the righteous. Surrender." "Pa," Ilara said, her voice low and urgent. "The caves. Now. Grab Gran." Silas didn't hesitate. He slung his rifle, scooped Sorcha into his arms, and grabbed Martha by the wrist. "Move!" They bolted, not for the woods, but for the sheer bluff face behind the cabin. "Fleeing into the earth?" Cole called after them. "How appropriate! You are merely returning to your master." Alara was the last. She looked back at Cole, who stood illuminated by the approaching torches, his face serene. She then looked at the dead panther and the withered ground. She felt the exhaustion, the deep, aching emptiness the blight left behind. She turned and ran, following her family to a small, dark fissure in the rock, a hidden opening that was the true secret of the Harrow homestead. Jedediah Vance did not feel righteous. He felt sick. He held his torch high, the pine resin dripping onto his buckskin sleeve. Around him were a dozen men from Possum Creek. Hiram Spleen was there, along with the blacksmith and several other trappers. They were armed with rifles, hatchets, and a grim, superstitious terror. Reverend Cole had shown them. After riding back to the settlement, he had described what he'd seen. The blighted moss, the cold air. He had opened his book of ash and read the old testimonies from Appalachia, stories of children who withered at a touch, of livestock turned to dust. He had told them the Harrows were not just wrong, they were a plague. They were the reason for the poor harvest, the sickness that took 2 children last winter, the general unluckiness of the territory. He had fanned their fear into a righteous, purifying fire. Jed, remembering his brittle, dead hound, had been the first to pick up his rifle. Now, as they descended into the holler, he saw the cabin, and he saw the clearing. "Lord have mercy," Hiram whispered, crossing himself. The circle of decay was undeniable. It was a perfect 20-foot ring of death, with the cabin porch at its center. The massive panther lay in the middle, its fur matted, its body somehow shrunken. It looked like a dried-out husk. The very ground was gray and cracked. "Behold," Cole announced, his voice echoing in the enclosed space. "The work of the Appalachian strain. This is the hunger you have harbored in your midst." The men murmured, their fear turning to anger. They did that?" Jed asked, nudging the panther's corpse with his boot. It was stiff and light, as if all moisture had been violently vacuumed from it. "The girl, Alara," Cole said, his face illuminated by the torchlight. "She wields the blight with a power I have not seen recorded. She is the apex of the curse." "Where'd they go?" the blacksmith demanded, holding a hammer. "Into the earth," Cole said, pointing to the bluff. "Behind the cabin. They have a bolt hole." The men followed. Behind the cabin, hidden by a canvas sheet and some overgrown briars, was a narrow opening in the limestone. "A cave. They've gone to ground," Jed said. "That's their tomb." "No," Cole said. "It is their church. These Ozarks are riddled with caverns. They will know the paths. They are fleeing to their source. We must not let them." He looked at the men. Some were hesitant, going into a dark cave after a family that could kill with a touch. "Are you men of God, or are you children afeared of the dark?" Cole challenged. They are trapped. Their power, I have read, is drawn from living things. In the stone, they are cut off from their source. They will be weak. Now is the time to strike while the beast is cornered. This logic seemed to sound to the frontiersmen. In the dark, in the stone, they couldn't drain the trees. They would be weak. Hiram, Cole commanded. You and 2 others stay here. Burn the cabin. Burn everything. Salt the earth. We must leave no trace of their homestead. The rest of you, follow me. We will bring the light of God into the darkness. Jed Vance looked at the cabin, where he had traded pelts with Silas. He thought of the girl, Ilara, who had always seemed quiet and respectful. Then he looked at the withered panther. He hardened his heart. Light the torches, Jed said, taking charge. We're going in. This ends tonight. The men tore down the cabin door, using it for kindling. They piled furniture, bedding, and the Harrow's meager possessions in the center of the room. Hiram set it ablaze. The fire caught quickly, illuminating the holler in a pulsing, angry orange light. As the cabin burned, Reverend Cole, Jed Vance, and 8 other men plunged into the narrow opening in the rock, their torches casting long, monstrous shadows on the walls of the passage. The passage was narrow and wet. It immediately descended, the air growing thick and cool, smelling of millennia of damp stone and mineral deposits. The Harrows moved quickly, their footsteps echoing. Silas carried Sorsha, who seemed to weigh almost nothing. Martha stumbled behind him, sobbing quietly. Ilara was in the rear, acting as the rear guard. She was still weak, the massive expenditure of the blight having left her dizzy and nauseated. The itch was gone, replaced by a hollow, aching void. "Where are we going?" Martha panted, grabbing Silas's sleeve. "This is madness. We'll be buried alive." "These are the Whisperwind Caves," Silas said, his voice strained from the effort of carrying his mother. "This is our last refuge. The one Pa taught me. The one his Ma taught him. The pious hand. They know the legends," Sorsha whispered from his shoulder. "They know the blight draws from the living. Cole, he thinks he's trapped us. He thinks we are weak in the stone." "Are we?" Ilara asked, her voice echoing strangely. "He is a fool," Sorsha rasped. "He has read the books, but he has not lived the blood. He thinks the earth is just dirt and stone. He doesn't understand the depth." They emerged from the narrow passage into a vast, open cavern. It was immense, the ceiling lost in the darkness above their heads. The only light was the faint, ghostly glow of phosphorescent moss growing on the walls, and the distant, thunderous sound of an underground river. Stalactites and stalagmites filled the space like the teeth of a sleeping giant. "Here," Silas said, setting Sorsha down gently on a flat rock. He lit a small tallow candle he carried in his pouch. The tiny flame barely dented the oppressive dark. "They're coming," Ilara said, looking back. She could already see the faint flickering orange light of the posse's torches in the tunnel they'd just left. "Let them come," Sorsha said. Her voice seemed stronger here, in the deep earth. "Ilara, come to me." Ilara knelt by her grandmother. "You were reckless, girl," Sorsha said. "You let the hunger rule you. You took the easy path, the life of the panther, the life of the plants. It is a gluttonous, wasteful power." I was scared," Ilara admitted. "Good. Fear is a key, but you used it like a club. Now, in this place, you will learn the truth. Cole is right about one thing. We are tethered to the earth, but he thinks earth means the surface, the soil, the trees. He is wrong. Cillian Harrow tethered us to the deep earth, the ancient, slow, cold heart of the world." Sorsha grabbed Ilara's hand. It was freezing cold. "You feel the void, the emptiness after your outburst?" Ilara nodded. "Now, fill it. Not by taking from the surface, but by drawing from the deep. The stone is not dead, Ilara. It is just slow. Its life is measured in eons. The blight is a bridge to that. Place your hand on the cavern floor." Ilara did as she was told. "Cole thinks the stone weakens us," Sorsha whispered, a faint smile on her lips. "He is wrong. The stone calms us. The trees, the animals, their life is frantic, hot. It makes the blight frantic. It makes us hunger. But the stone, The stone is cold, patient, and endless. You do not drain the stone, girl. You commune with it. You borrow its strength, the strength of the mountains themselves. Elara closed her eyes. She focused as she had at the hearth, but this time there was no resistance. The emptiness inside her began to fill, not with a frantic hot energy, but with a deep, cold, massive presence. It felt like leaning against a mountain. It was slow and powerful and ancient. The dizziness faded. The nausea vanished. Her hands, which had been pale and skeletal, returned to normal, but they felt heavy, solid. I feel it, Elara whispered. It's cold, but it's strong. Sorcha said. This is our true home, not the cabin, the caves. The pious hand burned us out of the Appalachian trees, and we fled. They have now driven us into the Ozark stone. They do not know what they have done. The light of the torches was close now. They could hear the voices of the men, echoing and distorted. Silas, Elara said, standing up. She no longer felt like a terrified girl. She felt like the cavern around her, vast, dark, and permanent. Put out the candle, your eyes. Let them adjust. Mine already have. She turned to face the tunnel, her eyes, now fully accustomed to the gloom, easily picking out the shapes in the darkness. She could see the heat from the approaching torches. Martha, Elara commanded, her voice new. Take grandmother Sorcha. Follow the sound of the river. It leads to a lower chamber. Go, now. What about you? Silas asked, his rifle ready. You and I, Elara said, are going to show the Reverend what the Harrow blight truly is. Reverend Cole led the way, his Bible in one hand, a torch in the other. Jed and the others followed, their rifles at the ready, the torchlight creating a small, flickering bubble of safety in the immense pressing darkness. The sheer scale of the cavern was unsettling. Their voices, their footsteps, all seemed to be swallowed by the void. They're in here, Jed muttered, his eyes straining. I can smell the wood smoke from their clothes. They are here, Cole agreed. And they are weak. The stone bleeds their power. They are nothing but cornered animals. He held his torch high. Harrows, hear me. Your sanctuary has become your tomb. Come forth and accept purification. The hand of God is merciful to the repentant. Only the drip, drip, drip of water from the ceiling answered him. Spread out, Jed commanded the men. Watch the shadows. They could be anywhere. The men fanned out, their torches separating, creating small, isolated islands of light. It was a tactical mistake. From the darkness, a rifle shot cracked. It wasn't the loud boom of the outside, but a flat, sharp pop that echoed painfully. One of the trappers, a man named Phineas, cried out and fell, clutching his leg. His torch sputtered and went out in a puddle. They're shooting from the dark, someone yelled. Return fire, Cole ordered. The men fired blindly into the darkness, the muzzle flashes illuminating nothing but rock and shadow. The sound was deafening, the cavern filling with acrid black powder smoke. Hold your fire, you fools, Jed roared. You're wasting shot, and you're telling them where we are. He's right. Silas's voice boomed from the darkness, seeming to come from everywhere at once. And you told us where you are. Another shot. This time, the blacksmith's torch was hit, the wooden shaft splintering. It fell and extinguished, plunging another section of the cavern into darkness. They're picking off the torches, Jed yelled, realizing the trap. Get together, back to back. The remaining men scrambled back to Cole, forming a tight circle, their torches held in the center. They were now a single bright target in a sea of black. Reverend, Jed said, his voice tense, your faith better be strong. They ain't weak, they're smart. They are desperate, Cole countered, though his own eyes darted nervously. They are blinding us to cover their escape. No, Elara's voice said. It was calm, and it came from right behind them. Jed spun around. Elara was standing there, not 20 feet away, just at the edge of the torchlight. She was alone. She held no rifle. Witch! One of the men screamed, raising his rifle. Wait, Cole commanded. He stared at Elara. She was not pale. She was not trembling. Her eyes in the torchlight seemed to absorb the light rather than reflect it. Your hunt is over, Reverend, Ilara said, her voice carrying no echo. You should not have followed us into our home. This is a pit of corruption, Cole retorted, and you are the last of it. Surrender. You speak of corruption, Ilara said, taking a step forward. You, who brought a mob to burn a home. You who speaks of God but worships a book of ash. You don't know God. You don't even know the earth you stand on. Blasphemy. Cole raised his Bible. The Lord will strike you down. No, Ilara said. She held out her hand, not to drain him, not to attack. She held it out, palm up. The Lord won't, but the mountain will. Jed, being a woodsman, felt it first, a change in the air, a low, deep vibration that was felt more in the bones than heard with the ears. What is that? He asked, looking up. You've been in the dark so long, Reverend, Ilara said. You've forgotten what happens when you bring fire into a place that has only known cold. She wasn't talking about the blight. She was talking about the air. Silas, from his perch high above them on a ledge, fired his rifle one last time. He wasn't aiming at a man or a torch. He was aiming at a massive stalactite, a column of stone the size of a church bell that hung directly over the posse. The bullet struck, but it wasn't the bullet that did the damage. It was the sudden, violent change in temperature from the cluster of torches the men were holding. The ancient limestone, stable for millennia in the constant, cool damp, had been stressed. The concussive booms of the rifles had been the final straw. The vibration Jed felt was the mountain groaning. "It's a cave-in!" a man screamed. A huge crack spiderwebbed across the ceiling. Rocks began to fall. "To the tunnel, run!" Jed yelled. The men broke formation, scrambling back toward the narrow passage they had entered. Reverend Cole did not run. He stood his ground, his face a mask of fanaticism, watching Ilara as the cavern began to disintegrate around him. "You cannot escape!" he bellowed over the roar of falling stone. "The hand of God will find you! You are erased!" "No, Reverend," Ilara said, as a massive boulder fell between them, kicking up a cloud of dust. "We are hidden." Jed Vance grabbed Cole by the arm. "Reverend, move. You want to be purified? You're about to be." Jed dragged the preacher toward the tunnel. The other men were already scrambling inside, but Silas was not finished. From above, he pushed a large, precariously balanced flowstone. It toppled with a groan and crashed down, sealing the entrance to the narrow passage. Not completely, but enough to block a quick escape. The main cavern was collapsing. The posse was now trapped between the main cave-in and the blocked passage. "He's trapped us!" Hiram Spleen shrieked, clawing at the newly fallen rocks. This is not right," Cole said, his certainty finally shattering. He looked at the sealed passage, then back at Ilara, who was calmly walking away, deeper into the cavern, toward the sound of the underground river, joining her father, who had leaped down from his ledge. "This is not God's will." "It's the mountain's will, preacher," Jed yelled. He looked at the tons of rock sealing the passage. They could dig it out, maybe, if the rest of the cavern didn't come down on them first. Their torches were burning low. Ilara and Silas disappeared into the darkness. The sound of the falling rock subsided, replaced by the terrifying sound of settling. The posse was left in the dark. Their torches had been extinguished by the falling debris and dust. They were trapped. "Light a torch," Cole demanded, his voice shaking. Jed fumbled for his flint and steel. He struck it, a small spark. He tried again. The spark caught on a piece of dried moss he carried. He lit a new torch. The light revealed a horrific scene. Phineas, the man Silas had shot, was gone, buried under tons of rock. The blacksmith was also missing. Of the dozen men who had entered, only 5 remained. Cole, Jed, Hiram, and 2 other trappers. They were in a small, cramped pocket, the original cavern now 80% smaller, sealed off by a mountain of fresh, unstable rock. The passage back to the surface was blocked. "They're gone," Hiram wept, sinking to the ground. "They're gone, and we're buried." Jed looked at the wall of rock. "We can dig. We have to dig." "No." Reverend Cole's voice was hollow. He was staring at his hand. The silver ring he wore, the one he had used to signal the posse, had been crushed by a piece of falling stone. His fingers were broken. "Reverend?" Jed asked. She was right, Cole whispered. He looked at the darkness where Alara had vanished. She didn't use the blight, not on us. She used the stone. He seemed to collapse in on himself. His faith, his armor, had been built on the idea that the Harrow's power was a frantic, hot, living corruption. But what he had seen was cold, patient, and elemental. He had seen a power that did not belong to his cosmology of God and devil. "She's not a plague," Cole murmured, his eyes wide with a terrible, insane revelation. "She's the earth, the whole lineage. They're not a stain on the land. They are the land." He began to laugh, a high, thin, terrifying sound that echoed in the tiny, dark space. "Reverend, hold yourself," Jed said, shaking him. "Erased," Cole cackled, holding up his crushed hand. "My order, my pious hand. They tried to erase the Harrows, but all they did was drive them from the shallow soil of Appalachia and plant them in the deep, dark heart of the continent. We didn't destroy the root. We transplanted it." His laughter turned to a sob. "We didn't trap them in here. God help us. They trapped us." Jed Vance looked at the wall of rock, then at the half-mad preacher. He raised his torch. "Start digging, Hiram. It's a long way back to the surface." Deeper in the cave system, the Harrow family regrouped on the shore of a vast, black river. It flowed silently, without a ripple, a ribbon of pure night moving through the mountain's core. You killed them," Martha whispered, staring back into the darkness. The roar of the cave-in was a distant, grinding echo. "No," Alara said. She was breathing evenly. The cold strength of the stone filled her. "I didn't. The mountain did. They brought their fire, their iron, and their noise into a place of silence and cold. The mountain," it shrugged. Silas put a hand on his daughter's shoulder. His face, in the faint phosphorescent glow, was one of awe. He had fought the blight his whole life, seen it as a vicious, hateful thing. Alara had just used it, not as a weapon, but as a lens, a way to feel the weakness in the stone, to know exactly where to strike. "You are your grandmother's child," Silas said, his voice thick with a new, strange pride. "She is Cillian's child," Sorsha corrected, her voice weak. The ordeal had taken its toll. "She is the first of us to understand the pact. We are not just of the mountains. We are them. We do not drain life. We exchange it." Ilara looked at her hands. They felt normal. The itch was gone. The void was gone. There was only balance. "What now?" Martha wept. "Our home is gone. We are in the dark." "Our home was never the cabin, Martha," Sorsha said. "That was just a box, a hiding place. This is our territory." Silas pointed across the Black River. On the far shore, the phosphorescent moss grew brighter. "There are passages, the old stories. They say these caves go on for miles, that they connect all the way to the western ridges. We can find a new place, a new holler, one they can't find." "They'll dig out," Silas said. "Cole and the others, they'll get back to the surface." "Aye," Alara agreed. "They will. And they will tell the world that the Harrow lineage is dead, that we were buried by the wrath of God in a cave-in. They'll believe they erased us." She looked at her family, her terrified mother, her grim father, her ancient, knowing grandmother. "Let them believe it," Ilara said. "Let the church strike the Harrow name from their book of ash. Let them believe their cleansing is finally done." Silas began lashing together pieces of driftwood that had collected on the riverbank, remnants of trees that had fallen into sinkholes miles above. He was building a crude raft. "They're the ones who are erased," Alara said softly, looking at the black water. "They're just ghosts now, digging for a sun they won't recognize when they see it. We are the ones who survived." They drifted on the Black River for hours, or perhaps days. Time had no meaning in the deep earth. The only sound was the dip of the pole Silas used to guide the raft. The phosphorescent light gave the darkness a dreamlike quality. They were passing through a cavern filled with delicate, white, blind crayfish. The blight in Alara no longer hungered for them. It seemed to recognize them as part of its own dark, silent world. But Sorcia was fading. She had not spoken since they'd boarded the raft. She lay curled on her side, her breathing shallow. The journey, the fear, and the long, long life were finally too much. "Gran?" Ilara whispered, kneeling beside her. Sorcha's eyes opened. The cataracts were thick, but her gaze was sharp. "It is time," she rasped. "No," Silas said, his voice cracking. "Don't say that." "Be quiet, boy," Sorcia commanded. "This is not a death. It is a change. The blight, it holds on. It tethers us to the living. But my thread is worn thin." She reached out and gripped Ilara's wrist. Her hand was impossibly cold, colder than the cave air. "The pious hand. They don't understand. They think the blight is passed through blood. It is. But the history, the knowledge, that is passed by touch." "Gran, I don't understand," Ilara said, tears welling in her eyes. "You don't have to." Sorcha's eyes closed. "You are the head of the lineage now. You are the one who knows the stone. I am of Appalachia. I am of the trees and the soil. I am the last of that pact. You are of the Ozarks. You are of the caves and the dark. A new pact." When she spoke again, her voice was not her own. It was a chorus of voices, men, women, old and young, all speaking at once through her. It was the collective memory of the Harrow lineage, passed from one keeper to the next. Ilara gasped. The voices, the memories, the images were pouring into her. She saw Cillian kneeling in the snow. She saw the pious hand, in their black coats, burning a farmhouse. She felt the fear, the rage, and the iron-hard will to survive. The entire cursed history of her family was flooding her mind, not as a story, but as her own memory. The blight flared in her, not as hunger, but as a vast, cold awareness. It connected her to her grandmother, and through her grandmother, to every Harrow who had ever lived. And then, the connection severed. Sorcha's hand went limp. The voices stopped. The old woman sighed, a tiny final breath, and she was gone. But she was not just gone. As Ilara watched, her grandmother's body began to change. It did not decay. It petrified. In the strange, cold, mineral-heavy air of the cavern, her skin took on the texture of limestone. Her form solidified, her face becoming a mask of serene, ancient stone. Within minutes, the woman who was Sorcia Harrow was gone, and in her place lay an effigy of rock, which itself seemed to sink, merging with the floor of the raft. Martha crossed herself, her prayer a choked whisper. Silas bowed his head, his shoulders shaking. Ilara did not weep. She felt a profound, cold sadness, but also an immense strength. She had taken her grandmother's burden. She was the matriarch now. She was the keeper of the Appalachian strain, now rooted in the Ozark stone. She looked at her father and mother. "Pull us to the shore, Pa. We have to bury her. We have to find the surface. We have to live." It took another day. They followed the river until it plunged into a deafening, impassable waterfall. They left the raft and found a side passage, a long, dry tunnel that slanted upward. The air grew warmer, fresher. They could smell pine and damp soil. Finally, they saw it. A pinprick of light. Silas used his bare hands, hard as spades, to dig through the rockfall and roots that choked the exit. They emerged, blinking, into the bright, painful light of morning. They were on a mountainside, miles west of their old holler, in a place no one had ever walked. It was a shut-in, a valley so deep and narrow it was almost a canyon, carved by a small, clear creek. The bluffs were sheer granite, the woods thick with virgin pine and oak. It was inaccessible from almost every direction, save for the cave from which they had just emerged. It was perfect. We're alive," Martha breathed, falling to her knees and touching the green grass. She looked at her hands, half expecting the grass to wither. It didn't. "This is our new home," Ilara announced. Her voice had a new authority. "We will build here. We will not hide. We will reside." Silas looked at his daughter. The 19-year-old girl who had run from a possum snare was gone. In her place was a woman who seemed as old as the mountains. He nodded. "I'll start on a lean-to." They worked. For weeks they survived on Alara's knowledge of edible roots and Silas's snares. Silas felled trees and built a new cabin, smaller and smarter than the last, built directly into the bluff face, using the cave as a root cellar and a back door. Alara's relationship with the blight had completely changed. The itch was gone forever. The hunger was gone. She was no longer a victim of the curse. She was its master. She could feel the life of the valley, from the smallest insect to the largest oak. She could feel the cold, slow life of the rock beneath her feet. One day, Silas was struggling to move a massive foundation stone for the new chimney. "I can't budge it, girl," he grunted, sweating. Alara came over. She placed her hands on the stone. She didn't push. She closed her eyes. She communed with it. She used the cold power of the blight not to drain, but to align. She didn't lift the stone. She simply convinced it to move, shifting its center of gravity, finding the path of least resistance. With a groan, the massive rock slid perfectly into place. Silas stared. "How?" "The stone is patient," Alara said, quoting her grandmother. "You just have to be patient with it." They lived in their new holler for a year. They were completely self-sufficient. They were ghosts. The world did not know they existed. Back in Possum Creek, life had soured. It had taken Jedediah Vance, Hiram Spleen, and the other 3 survivors 4 days to dig their way out of the cave-in. They emerged half-starved, half-mad, and utterly broken. Reverend Theron Cole was the last one out. His hand was mangled, his eyes were hollow, and his black coat was torn to ribbons. His pious hand was broken. When they returned to the settlement, they told the story. They told of the cave-in, the darkness, and the death of their friends. They told how the Harrows, all of them, were buried under 1,000,000 tons of Ozark Mountain. The church had won. The Appalachian strain was erased. Possum Creek celebrated. They held a service for the martyrs who had died cleansing the land. Reverend Cole was hailed as a hero, but the hero did not stay. A week later, he mounted his black gelding and rode east, his face a mask of stone. He never spoke of the Harrows again. He left his dark Bible, the Book of Ash, on the bar of the general store. He was a man whose faith had been confronted by a truth it could not comprehend, and it had shattered him. The settlement, however, did not recover. The wrongness that Jed Vance had once blamed on the Harrows, it didn't go away. In fact, it got worse. The winter of 1828 was the harshest in memory. The deer vanished. The crops failed, the soil turning strangely sour. The cows grew sick and gaunt. The locals blamed the ghosts of the Harrows. They said the family's haints were poisoning the land from below. They began to avoid the area of the burned-out cabin. They said you could hear digging from under the earth. Jed Vance knew better. He knew it wasn't the Harrows. He knew, deep in his bones, that the blight, the strain, hadn't been the source of the land's sickness. The Harrows had been absorbing it. They had been a part of the land, and in their own dark, unnatural way, they had been its caretakers, drawing the wrongness into themselves. By burning them out, by driving them away, the pious posse hadn't cleansed the land. They had crippled it. They had removed a vital, if terrifying, piece of the puzzle. Jed Vance left the Ozarks a year later, heading for the Oregon Territory. He told people he was looking for new trapping grounds. In truth, he was fleeing a place that felt hollow. Possum Creek was abandoned by 1835, a ghost town on the banks of the White River. The Harrow lineage did not die. It endured. Alara lived to be an old woman, as ancient and formidable as Sorcha had been. She became a legend, a whispered rumor in the hills, the witch of the shut-in, but no one ever found her. She had children. The blight was passed down, but it was no longer the Appalachian strain. It was no longer a hot, frantic hunger for life. Alara taught her children the lessons of the stone. She taught them control, balance, and the cold, slow, patient strength of the deep earth. They were no longer a curse. They were a lineage. They became the secret keepers of the Ozarks. They lived in their hidden valley, unseen, unknown. They were the shadows that the church believed it had erased. The Pious Hands records, back in Boston, would list the Harrow Line as terminated 1827 Missouri Territory. But they were wrong. The church had tried to erase a history, but they had failed. They had only managed to change its nature. They had driven the Harrows from the world of men, from the world of sun and soil, and forced them to make a new pact with the darkness beneath. And in that darkness, the lineage thrived. The narrator's voice, which has been telling the story, fades back in. The church tried to erase them. They burned their homes. They struck their names from the records. They hunted them across a continent. But you cannot erase something that is part of the land itself. The Appalachian blight simply adapted. It became the Ozark silence. To this day, they say there are valleys in those mountains where the birds do not sing, not because of a curse, but because of a presence. A cold, quiet, watchful presence. The Harrow lineage is still there, not hiding, just waiting, living the slow, patient life of the stone. And the church to this day has never found them again.